Sean, can you just turn that on for me, the mic? I would ask anybody who would like to speak this evening, make sure you sign up. Anybody like to speak this evening, just sign up, of course. All right. So, Madam Clerk, I'm going to call this this public hearing meeting to order and open it up for public comment, okay? So tell me when you're ready. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the City Council public hearing on the proposed charter changes. This is Monday, July 25th, 2022. I'm John Igliozzi, the president. Also with me, we also have President Pro Tem Pedro Espinal, Deputy Majority Leader Mary Kay Harris, Majority Leader Taylor with us at this time. Once again, if anybody would like to speak this evening and elaborate their position on any proposed charter change, please sign up. What I will do is, as we move along, I'll start off with 3 minutes for a person to come up and speak, and then we'll go from there. Okay? Mr. Clerk, do you have the sign-up sheet? This meeting, this public hearing is officially open, Madam Clerk. Also, as a reminder, there'll be another public hearing tomorrow night. It'll be a Zoom public hearing. And then on Thursday, there'll be another public hearing, which will be another live public hearing. So as you know, since January, the Charter Review Commission has been holding meetings and hearings, public charrettes since then. And now we continue with that public interaction this evening. Okay. So first order we have, once again, if anybody would like to speak, just sign up over there. If the city sergeant can let the people, as they know, come in, they have to sign up to speak, okay? So we'll start with 3 minutes. Well, I'll do that at the end. I know. So with that said, we have Grant Delgarian. Mr. Delgarian, please come forward, sir. Welcome, Mr. Delgarian.
Good
Welcome
evening.
for attending. You have the mic. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. I just started looking at the suggestions, so I apologize. I'm glad you're having another hearing subsequently.
If you want to take a moment and go look at it and come back.
No,
you're
that's all
more
right.
than welcome. Okay.
I had 2 or 3 thoughts that have been in my brain for a while now that I wanted to communicate with all of you. And number 1 is the composition of the city council. When I was a kid growing up, or even before, the city council consisted of 13 wards, 2 council persons per ward. And that made a lot of sense to me because you might have better rapport with one person than another, and you had 2 representing you directly. I always think of city councilors as representing the city overall because we don't have at-large, and I'm not a fan of at-large. But you know, it's nice to have 2, you know, right there in your neck of the woods. So my suggestion is for the city to consider going back to that. When we went to, it wasn't until we created the city charter back in the early 1980s that we transitioned from 26-member city council, 2 per ward, 13 wards, to 15 wards, 1 council person per ward. The argument at the time that I was told, because I inquired, was, oh, it'll provide for greater diversity. Well, as it turned out, in fact, the exact opposite occurred. We lost minority members that we had on the full city council. Excuse me. And so that prediction didn't transpire at all whatsoever. Most tickets were being worked on to provide a balanced slate of officers, of candidates. And so I would recommend that to be visited by the city. Number 2, most cities allow the public, most cities and towns in Rhode Island allow the public to address the city council somewhere along the line, either beginning, middle, end of their council meeting. Providence is one of the few that does not. It would be nice to have that opportunity. You can limit people to 2 or 3 minutes. If they have more to say, they can come back to the next council person meeting. But that would be a very welcome sentence to include in the city charter. Excuse me, number 3, and then I'll sit down. I noticed that there is a suggestion that we don't put in a newspaper of general circulation upcoming council meetings, council hearings, and I am very supportive of continuing to include that in there. The argument is, well, we got all these other ways of communicating, we don't need this. It's still appropriate and very helpful to have it in the newspaper of general circulation. So I will sit down and let others speak, and then if I could come back for a couple minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Delgarian. And Mr. Delgarian, just for your edification, the proposed ballot charter change isn't to eliminate the newspaper, but actually to add and expand additional media outlets. So have other ways to also do notices. So it's to add on, expand public notice, not limit it. Just for your own edification. That's the request. All right. Next up, we have David Talon. That should come forward, of course, state your name, where you live, and then you'll have 3 minutes. And Mr. Talon? No, that's not how, Mr. Talon. Mr. Talon, you do not distribute. Give it to the clerk and she does distribution. If you have something to hand out, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Talon. There you go. Thank you very much. And the clerk will distribute accordingly, okay? Go first. Mr. Talon, you have the mic. You have 3 minutes. You can state your name, where you live. We'll go from there.
Sure. My name is David Talon from 25 Santiago Street in Ward 8. I'm the co-chairman of the Republican Party for the city of Providence. And what I'm asking is you to include a proposal in the Home Rule Charter to provide minority party representation on all the city's boards and commissions. This is not a wacky proposal. It's something that, from the handout I gave out, already exists in most of our neighboring cities and towns. The handout I gave you gives specific examples from the charters in North Providence, East Providence, and Warwick. And I know it exists in other communities farther away from Providence. In addition, the Providence Home Rule Charter already includes a similar provision for the Board of Canvassers only, but not for other boards or commissions. So I provided sample wording on each of those, any one of which could be cut and pasted and would be acceptable to include in the Providence Home Rule Charter. I think in general, having a variety of opinions on boards and commissions is a healthy thing, something that does not really exist right now on the boards and commissions. I know the comment has been made to me that, the mayor can always appoint anybody and he doesn't need this requirement. But I know a lot of the proposals that you've made in the changes for the Home Rule Charter are not so much that they're needed, but because they're just not being done and you felt you needed to incorporate them in the charter. This is certainly the case with this proposal for minority party representation, because starting in 2002, when Mayor Cicilline removed every Republican on any board or commission as soon as their terms are up, and has continued under the 2 succeeding mayors, to the point where not one single Republican in the entire city of Providence is on any board or commission, not a single one. And I know there may be some comments that, well, there aren't any Republicans to put on the board of commissions, but in fact, there's 7,464 registered Republican voters in the city of Providence, and 3,114 of them actually voted in the most recent election. So it's a pretty significant number of people that are just not represented at all in city government. And we don't want to just complain about things. We want to be part of the solution. And we're not being given that opportunity now. And unfortunately, I think it's going to require an amendment to the city charter to make it happen, or it just isn't going to happen. I know this is not on the proposed list of changes that you're submitting, And I had submitted this to Councilman Vargas, who was your vice chairman, 3 months ago. I've also submitted it to Commissioner Principe when he had a public hearing. And I've given it to you, Mr. Chairman, and I've given it to other members, and I've never been called to ask to testify on this, not for lack of willingness, but it just hasn't been the opportunity. So I apologize that this is coming before you at this late date, but not for lack of trying. So again, I urge you to make this change and give everybody in the city of Providence a chance to be part of the solution.
Thank you. Next individual, and I'm not saying it right. Is it Dehamat? Demont, I'm sorry. Welcome. Welcome.
Hi.
Just for everybody's edification, if you have handouts, anything you want to hand out to the clerk or the thing, you have to stay at the bar there, the city sergeant. If any of you's been in a court of law, the way it works is you don't cross the bar unless the city sergeant opens the bar for you. When you're done, you go back beyond the bar. If you have any handouts, pass outs, you do not approach the council members one-on-one. You approach the city sergeant, and then he will take you to the handouts, or if you have a question of a council person one-on-one. This is, unfortunately, the world has changed, and safety and security is job one in any professional chambers, and that's where we are at this time. So I just want everybody to understand that's how we are. If you could just state your name for the record, your address, and then you will have 3 minutes. And welcome.
My name is Demont Combs. I live at 280 Washington Street in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm a national award-winning poet, author, and filmmaker. And I come before you today to thank the Charter Review Commission. I represent artists from all over Providence. I represent committees and commissions, the Rhode Island Black Storytellers, the Lincoln's Community Poetry, and the Reparations Committee. I have been petitioning the Charter Review Commission to amend Section 1007, amending the purchasing threshold for the Board of Contract and Supplies. And they've agreed to upgrade that amount from $5,000 to $15,000. And I'm very happy with this decision because it is not enough funding. The $5,000 wasn't enough funding for artists to be able to pay when they do PVD Fest, a part of Arts, Culture, and Tourism as well. Lizzie, she's right over there. She's been helping me with this process as we're going forward, and I'm really appreciative of the Charter Review Commission for reviewing and giving this upgrade, which is much needed. My hopes is that this upgrade will actually expand to the whole state of Rhode Island. I'm just giving you guys an update. I'm meeting actually with somebody in Pawtucket to talk exactly about doing this in Pawtucket as well, hopefully making this process much easier. So that's all. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for participating in the charter review process. Next up is Cecil. Is this right? Maybe not. Excuse me. Cecil? Cecil? Or, am I saying that right? Come forward, just state your name for the record, your address, and you have the mic for 3 minutes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Cecil Hickman. I live at 1 Regency Plaza, and I'm a supporter of the effort by Demont Combs. I've worked with him for several months now on this particular thing. I'm a retired City Hall reporter in Kansas City and Cleveland. It's my pleasure to be here. I think when I've worked and hung out with the creatives in this city, this is an extremely important matter for their livelihood. I just wanted to add my support for this effort. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for participating. Next up is Sean Selleck. Please come forward, state your name and address, and then you will have your 3 minutes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Sean Selleck. I reside at 138 Messer Street in Providence. Greetings to the council, my former colleagues, and the people of Providence. There are a number of proposed changes to the charter, and as a citizen who's very familiar with the charter and its importance on the governing of the city of Providence, I'd like to speak to 3 of those changes that were considered, 2 of which were recommended by the Review Commission. First, there's a request to amend section 403 to allow for the removal procedure for appointed officers to be defined by ordinance and also allow the city council to remove council appointees by a vote of a simple majority. Charter language isn't always the easiest to digest or understand the origins of. Even Dan McGowan wrote this morning that the related impeachment type process is bizarre, but the removal of a council appointee is extremely serious. And this proposed change, in my opinion, is the most alarming of any item on the agenda before us, because it weakens the charter's protection of key checks and balances on power in City Hall and unnecessarily politicizes these roles. Why is the concept of council appointees so important? They're supposed to act independently without political interference from the city council or mayor, and always in the best interest of the people of Providence, not in the best interests of elected officials. Council appointees who act with integrity are in powerful roles to improve the transparency and accountability of government. Council appointees are made at the beginning of every city council term. It will happen in less than 6 months. In January, as soon as the new city council is sworn in, no current city council appointee is guaranteed to have a job after that time. But once an appointment is made, the appointee is expected to manage their department to the best of their ability. Today, to change or remove an appointee midterm, it requires a supermajority, 10 of 15 council members. With this change, literally the shifting of a single vote could change who controls the influence in City Hall and the influence on city council appointees. This would result in a concerning situation for such important managers of the city's affairs. Let's review some examples of city council appointees, all of whom will be up for reappointment in less than 6 months. Municipal judges serve the people of Providence in our municipal court. Would we like them to feel more pressure to rule on a case as a result of the influence of an elected official? The internal auditor makes sure the law is being followed when it comes to city budgets. Would we like them to feel more pressure to overlook discrepancies with an elected official looking over their shoulder? The city clerk is responsible for accurately recording the laws made by the city council. Would we like them to feel more pressure to conceal amendments made in committees because of the influence of an elected official? The city treasurer controls the checkbook of the city. Would we like them to feel more pressure to use this power to influence decisions in City Hall? I think we can all agree that the city council appointees in these roles and others should serve the citizens of Providence, not ever shifting political winds. The city council should remove this amendment from the list of those being approved for the ballot this fall. The second amendment I would like to speak against utilizes the same maneuver as the first. Section 401D would allow the city council to hire consultants by a vote of a simple majority. It gave me a chuckle to read this amendment, to be honest, because I'm not sure why a change would be requested for a charter section that's not being followed today. Legal counsel was hired last year for tens of thousands of dollars without the request of the vote of the city council. The charter was violated and there were no consequences. Now there's a request, quote unquote request, to drop this threshold for special non-legal counsel expenditures to a simple majority in order to simplify the process. That's code language for, we would like it to be easier for us to spend taxpayer dollars, even though it was never included in our budget and almost half of the council might be opposed to it. Spending taxpayer dollars for special reasons should require a special vote.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Selleck. Your time is up, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Selleck. Your time is up. We have other people speaking. Please respect the process, sir. Thank you for your time and participating. Thank you, sir. See, Sergeant, I believe there's other folks that have signed up. Is that correct? Could you please bring it up? Anybody else would like to speak at this time? Would anybody else like to speak at this time? Anybody else who hasn't spoken? Let's try that first. Anyone who hasn't spoken? Okay. Council members, do you want to say anything at this time? All right. Okay. There's no one else signed up at this time? Okay. All right. I will get, another person, if you want to speak again, I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay? So come forward.
Two minutes works for me.
There you go.
There was in here someplace, it talked about aligning our city charter with state law that says that public notice has to be at least 48 hours. And then the charter says 24. Back when we were working on getting public notice in the first place, statewide, I was involved with on the Board of Common Cause. We were working towards that. The argument was made by some folks that, well, we need at least a week's notice. I said, well, fine, but that's not, we can live with slightly less than a week. And at the time I said, we really need 72 hours notice. Anyway, it came back after back and forth negotiations and they ended up with 48 hours notice. And I said, that's 1 day too short because it hardly gives you any time to know that something is occurring and to rearrange your schedule if it conflicts with something you already had settled into. So my request is the city can do better than the state. And my request is, if you want to move it from 24, move it from 24 to 72. It gives more folks more time to be more aware of what's transpiring. And I think that would be very helpful. That's number one. And number two, I noticed that you want to up the minimum as far as the Board of Contractors Supply dollar amount is. And, there is inflation, so that's understandable. But I would suggest that going from 5 to 10,000 would make sense. To go to 5 to 15, I think is excessive, is too much of a jump. Now, in terms of construction contracts, the idea is.
Mr. Delgarian, your 2 minutes are up, sir.
I'm gonna,
Your 2 minutes are up. It's not fair because I'm sure other people want to speak for a second time. All set. Your 2 minutes are up, sir. Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak a second time? Come forward, please. Just state your name again, and then you will have 2 minutes.
Again, my name is Sean Selleck. I believe where I was cut off when I was saying that spending taxpayer dollars for special reasons should require a special vote. That's what the charter says today, and that's how it should remain. Third, finally, the commission felt that changes to section 602 did not belong in the charter, so no amendment was proposed to require the treasurer to ensure compliance with the city charter and code of ordinances prior to issuing any payments. This seems like something that a responsible, transparent, independent-minded treasurer would do by default. And if this had been followed, then the charter could not have been violated in the way I described when speaking about the Second Amendment I spoke about tonight. This also strengthens the first argument that I made against reducing the number of votes to influence or remove a council appointee, as I argued during the First Amendment. I hope that it is clear that it's a horrible idea to reduce our protections against political influence. When the City Council and the people of Providence vote for amendments to our charter, they should be voting to improve our city, to reduce the concentration of power. That is the moral compass upon which I've based my testimony, and I hope that I'm helpful to those wanting to strengthen our democracy, and thank you for your time. But I do have one other comment that I'd like to make, just to voice support for a couple of the items that people have spoken about before. Honestly, Council President, I don't think you make enough money for the time that you spend doing this job. And I think that the public should have a right to speak at public meetings, whether committee meetings, maybe not council meetings, because I know those are special, but at least committee meetings, the same way we are tonight at this public hearing about matters at hand, in return for a reasonable salary paid to council members that would potentially spend long evenings here in City Hall. And so I would like, maybe this council won't consider it, but I will push this publicly in the future. The council members should be paid more. They should be paid a reasonable living wage. And in return for that, I would like them to spend a little bit more time giving the opportunity to constituents to come and speak on important matters such as this on not so special occasions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Would anybody like to speak for a second time? Maybe like to speak for a first time? Anybody like to speak for a first time? Do we have any more signatures, sir? Okay. With that said, Madam Clerk, the first of several public hearings on the proposed charter changes, I hereby concluding this meeting and public hearing is closed. Thank you all for, one thing, my apologies. We have to submit several things, my apologies for the record. We'll submit, there are 2 letters of support for the hybrid, one from the, Susan DeRita, proposing a hybrid model, and to that, to the record, is I guess at Exhibit A. Another letter submitted from on Providence School heading from the school board. They're submitting a letter of concern, but also support of the hybrid model for school board. And then, of course, third, we have 2-page letter from David Talon, co-chair of the Providence Republican Party, as exhibit, I guess, A, B, C. Okay. Nothing else, no other further business, Madam Clerk, in this matter? Great, then I hereby call this public hearing closed. Thank you all for attending. Be well, be safe, and stay